Welcome back to another episode of Demand Gen Studio. I'm Miranda Jenkins from Boundify, and as always, I'm joined by Emilio Garcia. How are you doing, Emilio?
How are you, Miranda? Doing great.
I'm good. Good to have you again. Today, we're going to be talking through an effective Google ad setup for B2B. And this is kind of a bread and butter topic for us for Boundify. And this is like what we do best. So it should be a good conversation.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. Yeah, we always say that, right, is that when we think about topics for the studio, and we sometimes think, well, there's just so many things that you can say, but especially for things like Google Ads, an ever evolving platform, even with the basics as being here for almost a couple of decades, they keep changing, but at the same time, the principles are the same. And I think, we will even dive a little bit into what the future holds for considering AI, I think, because again, at the same time, it happens this little thing, which is there's changes you have to adapt, but at the same time, what keeps you in the right direction and with success is remembering the fundamentals. And I think this will be a great discussion to cover that.
Yeah, for sure. So just to kind of get us kicked off, to start, let's talk through what does it look like in your mind for a Google campaign to be B2B led and kind of like at a high level? What are the main differences of setting up your Google campaigns for B2B companies versus B2C?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. Over the years, as I as we have worked with B2C campaigns from time to time, but especially obviously trying to have success with B2B, we have discovered some important patterns. The first one I will say is just from the get-go, the level of attention that Google in its own platform dedicate to B2B. I will not be saying that they don't care about it, because they do. They have dedicated resources. Some of the tools inside the platform understand the concept that through Google, mostly you're going to get leads or prospects rather than actual sales right away. But definitely where the volume is and where the attention is in terms of the use of algorithms to improve performance, it's on the B2C side. And I think it's a very good reason for it. It has to do with volume, right? By definition, in B2C, you have 10 times, maybe 100 times more transactions. They happen faster. They are, they are valuing a lower amount. And as more and more things happen digitally, the whole process can be tracked over a website fairly easy, right? Nowadays, you can even see nowadays some of the most successful social media efforts or platforms are the ones that are allowing you to buy in the ad itself, which is crazy, right? TikTok, I think, started that. And now Meta is joining, and Instagram. And I'm sure that eventually Google itself will have to, or is doing something like that on, chopping ads, because that's the way that you reduce friction. So because you have all those things, measurement, volume, impact, performance can be measured way more easier, I believe, than what you can do in B2B. And the reason is exactly because it's almost the opposite of it, right? Way lower volume, longer sales cycles, larger transactions. Most of it happens not in the ad itself or in the ad platform. It happens outside. More and more that happens in platforms rather than in the real world, right? Signing quotes digitally, following up the deal digitally, but still, it doesn't happen in the platform. So the level of feedback you can get is different. So I will say that's one of the biggest differences between advertising for B2C versus advertising for B2B on a platform like Google. The second one is intent. We will cover this in more depth, but by definition, again, Google Ads is an intent platform, not a context one. And for things that we will not discuss today, they really hold very little information about the person from a B2B perspective. Who do they
Right.
work for? What is their position, their seniority? All those kind of questions that are relevant for B2B are not available to Google as well as it will be in something like LinkedIn.
Mhm.
Therefore, the only thing that you have to hold yourself accountable for who the person is, there's some cues in the query, and that's it.
Mhm.
And in the search term itself. So the other big issue is that a lot of searches that might be potential B2B inquiries might be B2C or residential. And so a
Mhm.
lot of the battle, it happens to B2C as well. I think I heard someone saying the other day that we are marketers, digital marketers are in the business of on targeting rather than
Mhm.
targeting, right? Of exclusions rather than inclusions.
Mhm.
And I think it holds true more so for B2B, where we
Yeah.
have to we have to be very cautious of not showing up for things that are residential in nature, for showing up in places where, even kids spend time.
Mhm.
So I think that's the other big challenge. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, yeah, I agree completely. And even just thinking from my experience building campaigns for clients, it feels like you definitely have to switch hats when thinking about how to structure a campaign on a platform like LinkedIn versus Google. And it feels like when you're building out the audience on LinkedIn, you're building a audience of people that you, like you said, you know who they are, you know their job title, you know the size of the company they work for,
Yeah.
you're targeting more things you know to be true. Whereas on Google Ads, you were having to kind of predict what you think the person is, how they're phrasing things, what they're looking for. And so it feels a little bit like you have to make more assumptions to get a, a campaign launched and then kind of tweak and optimize it from there to make sure that you're reaching the people you meant to reach when you built the campaign.
Yeah. There's another thing, another way to look at it, and is that, and I will use this phrase, the cost of false positives is very high in B2B. And what I mean by that is that in B2C, because of the level of automation that you have, it's
Okay.
okay if you get a lead or a potential prospect or buyer that is not true or aligned with what you sell, right? You can always have it on the newsletter. You can always have it on the checkout, send those emails. The cost of following up on someone of B2C is almost zero from a sales perspective because usually there are no humans behind it. They're just systems. You send an SMS, you send an email, you follow up on automatically. But in B2B, because of the nature of the purchase, the moment that you get a lead, you assign usually a human for
Mm-hmm.
qualification. And the cost of following the sales process and then that person not being qualified is high because you invest the time of people. So the other big difference is that you are way more strict on the persons that you're going to pass along to sales. And therefore you have the interesting dance between, well, I want to
Yeah.
send you opportunities or inquiries, but at the same time, I want to make sure that one, they are the right fit, and two, as much as possible, that we can infer intent and not just tire kickers that are asking for price, or to put an example, a question that could be have answer on the website itself rather than sending it to a person for to follow up on a sales process. So I think that's the other interesting difference between the two.
Yeah, definitely. All right, well, let's start talking through some of the campaign types that we recommend that B2B businesses have. I'll go ahead and share my screen. We have a short little visual for those of you not watching on or not listening on. You can take a look, and then it'll also be the link to the slides will be included in the show notes. So for any of you only audio listening, you can take a look at the slides afterwards. All right, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. All right, so here's the breakdown of the four main types of campaigns that we recommend for B2B. So, starting now with the number one primary campaign that we recommend people start with, and that's a high intent campaign. The goal with this campaign is to capture the leads that are ready to buy and talk to your sales team. And the targeting for this campaign would be keywords that show strong commercial intent for your offering and your product. So, you want to talk us through this campaign a little more, Emilio?
Yes, account or campaign structure can be a topic out of itself. And a little note there, remember, right? We can literally spend an hour talking about how do you organize campaigns, not just for Google, but for any ad platform. But I want to highlight something important for those of you, you can go obviously through Google Academy and kind of like learn all this, but the thing that for me is important is to understand the difference between what is it that you are managing at account, campaign, ad group, and technically keyword level, right? So I will give you the round out of that. So in my mind, account level usually has to match an entity. It can be a website, it can be a corporation. Usually you want to shield invoicing, pretty much, right? For purposes of who is being charged for this, an account on Google, that's what it does. And then when you go down to campaigns, one of the key things that campaigns do is that they constrain the budget that you assign to the effort, right? You decide budget at campaign level. The other big one is you constrain geography, countries, cities, locations that you want to show up. And another big one for us is you constrain the bidding system, or what is it that you're optimizing for, right? What is it that you're going to reward the algorithm on your campaign? If you go down a little bit lower, ad groups, usually you're pretty much lumping together ads with keywords, but that's probably not the topic today. But the reason I mentioned that about the campaigns is because the ideas that we're going to describe here from 1 to 4 is because you want to have as much as possible a lot of control into how much of your budget goes into very clear, generic, high intent versus other ideas that might make sense to you. If you put them all together, then you don't have a say. Then you are giving up Google the decision to say, well, if there's more opportunity for your brand and for the high intent keywords or category, I will put more money there. Or if you reward me for conversions, I will bring more conversions from your brand searches than from your competitors, to put an example. So the reason you want to think about campaigns on this is because you have that control of the budget. And obviously you can start saying, I'm going to allocate 0 to this effort, and therefore you don't have a campaign at all for that. Does that, resonate with what you have seen, Miranda?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So with that in mind, I like these 4 buckets, and I would like to walk through each of them and then go a little bit deeper. So as you were saying, Miranda, one is what we call high intent. The other one is bidding for your brand. The third one is bidding for your competition. And finally, for things that are closer to your category. So again, reminding everyone that most of the times when you're doing Google Ads for your B2B company is because the category of the products and services you offer is well defined, understood, and mature. So there's a lot of people searching for that category. It's just that they're not searching for your brand necessarily. Or if they are, you want to capture the group of people that are searching for your category, but not searching for your brand. And I use this analogy of the coffee aisle, right? So if you think about a supermarket, all the people that is walking through the coffee aisle, but they're not going after a specific brand, those are your high intent individuals. And you can think about any other aisle where someone is looking for a kind of product, but is not looking for a specific brand, right? So that's what we call high intent. It's generic because there is not branded, but it has to do with what you do. And I'm going to pick a random example, but let's say project management software will be a great one, and one that I use frequently. So for anyone looking for project management software and everything they might have to do with that, right? Prices, for specific industries, for specific features that your product might have. So the problems you solve, the solutions that all of those you can think about as them as high intent campaigns. These kind of campaigns are usually the ones that are the most expensive to run because they have the most competition, right? Every single project management software that has some digital marketing effort is probably already running one. And so all of them are getting into the auction and trying to, show up in the first place of the search engine. So, but you can think it about that way. I believe that this is the first campaign that every company should run. The only exception is when you are exactly in a product category or your product itself is so different that there's very few people searching for it, right?
Right.
Or service can be. Some of the examples that they have come from time to time is, for example, if you have a new AI product and you want to show up for people looking for the AI variant of it, right? That might not have a lot of searches right now compared to the, broader SaaS classification, for example. So if you say, I don't mind showing up for the broader category that I belong to, knowing that I'm going to compete with a lot of other offers that are AI enabled, which will be hard to happen right now, but still, then probably high intent will make no sense to you because you will have very few people searching for it. But if that's not the case, then high intent is the one that I recommend first. I think you have something to say there, Miranda. Extra.
Yeah, I was just thinking too, like, I don't want to underscore the fact that your a campaign is only as good as the keywords that you're targeting.
Yeah.
That's really like the root of building out, your campaigns. So definitely taking the time and using the tools. We use SEMrush a lot, or even just the keyword planner inside of Google to really put together a good list of keywords, but also thinking of it a little bit of as a testing ground when you're first launching, and then that's kind of where the optimizations that we'll talk about come into play. But in reality, like, unless you're doing extensive customer research in advance to know exactly the terms that people are Googling to find you, for a lot of industries and a lot of, different products, it is a little bit of a guessing game in the beginning of exactly the phrasing to get the audience that you want. So,
Yeah, it's awesome that you're bringing that topic because this is true. Another big difference between B2B led campaigns on Google is that most of these tools, SEMrush, Ahrefs, even the keyword planner on Google, they have the most information about the keywords that have the most volume. And because B2B usually have way lower volumes of search than B2C, then you get into a ton of searches that have some volume. It's just that they don't have a lot of data. You can be misguided by the volume itself that those tools will show. And even if the volume is very low, if your lifetime value is very large, which, for something that B2B that is not SaaS, like really industrial, commercial purchases might be the case, then it doesn't matter if you have 100 searchers. If you close one of those deals, it might make a big difference. So definitely you need to test using those tools as guidance and starting small, right? To see what is the true volume and letting impression share and click share guide you into how much you can add to the budget. But definitely be mindful that high intent usually is highly competitive, right? It's not going to come cheap because almost every category, even for B2B, is already bidding something for most of the keywords that have high commercial intent.
right.
Yeah. Now, from there, you have a couple of options. I will explore bidding for your own brand. more than for recommendation, more of a for alerting people about it. Because in my experience, most B2B advertisers are bidding for their brand. It's just that they don't know it. It's not a conscious decision. Rather, it happens because of the way they set up campaigns. So that will be the first thing, is that be mindful of going back to Google and making sure there's this little section, search terms is called, where you can actually see what are the searches that you're showing up, even independent of the keywords that you're bidding. And more often than not, especially if you're bidding for conversions, Google is showing up for your own brand, because those terms are the ones that usually have the highest conversion rates. And that's what you are rewarding the algorithm for. So that will be the first warning, right? But if you have already excluded your own brand from your high intent campaigns, then it's moment to think about if bidding for your brand makes sense or not. And I will never say that it's a complete no or a complete yes. I think the answer is how incremental bidding for your brand is for your business. It's very hard to test, but it's possible. Basically, you can say, well, imagine that you have a product or service and you have two countries or two locations that are very similar in terms of search volume for organic. And you say, we have 10,000 people searching for a brand on this city and 10,000 people searching for a brand on this other city or location. And you say, well, and we get some X amount of revenue from that search. If we start bidding for our own brand in one of the places and not the other, and we start seeing the difference in revenue, compare the investment that we did on brand and see if we put an extra dollar on our own brand, but we got a couple of dollars extra of revenue, then it makes sense to bid for your brand, right? Versus not doing it and just showing up organic, because you will always show up organically for your brand. Now, what makes that choice easier to do without any test is when your competitors are showing up on your own brand, because you can run the test, but it's very logical to think that if the first three positions are paid from others and your result is the 4, right? Your chances of someone clicking go a little bit lower, right? It's not true that, is it true that someone searching for your own brand will definitely click on your own, but they might explore the competition for sure. So bidding for your brand is a strategic choice. You can test it. Usually when you don't recommend it is when your brand is not that well known, your competitors are not bidding for your own brand. So it makes no sense, right? Rather just focus on high intent and probably invest more time on the third strategy if you're smaller. So those are kind of the ideas behind your own brand. What do you think about that, Miranda?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's for sure a litmus test for that campaign of deciding if it's necessary. It's kind of a by different company use case if it's necessary. But like you said, if you're searching for your brand and organically for free, you're showing up at the, top of the results list, then no, you don't need to, put money behind to stay there. But definitely if you're searching for your brand and seeing all of your competitors first, then it is worthwhile to kind of, like we said, protect your spot in the playing field for your branded terms.
Yeah. And yeah, just say.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I was going to say, and that's another big reason why you want to isolate this idea with a budget, because then you can dynamically choose how much you want to spend, use your click share or click ratio or display share to kind of moderate that budget. And usually it doesn't have to be big because you're super relevant to that search. It's your own domain usually as well. And you can even go and challenge the cost per click or the cost per conversion and just keep it super, super low and win almost all auctions. Be very defensive, almost like paying for showing up rather than for clicking or converting, because that's basically the play. So At the same time, do not be surprised if that is your best performance campaign. Is by definition going to be super successful because it's your own brand. Now, moving into the third one is the complete opposite, right? So I love the competitors campaign, but again, you want to be mindful of two things. One is that Google's algorithm, which is leveraged by AI a ton, will correctly infer that if someone is searching for your category, like project management system, and you happen to be Asana, then when somebody's looking for ClickUp is a project management software. So someone might be interested on ClickUp on your product Asana as well, just because they're searching ClickUp. So very similar to your own brand. Unless you prevent it, you are probably showing up for your competition on your generic search terms, because Google has that ability of semantically connecting all these companies in the category they belong to. But again, unfortunately, your performance for those searches will not be the same as the performance for your brand or the performance for generic terms. Your click-to rate ratio will be different. Your conversion rate will be different because they're searching for a specific company and not the generic term. So I don't like the idea of showing up for your competition when someone is searching for that on your high intent campaign. I want to make sure that we isolate that on that campaign and that you remove competitors from your campaign. But if you are like, well, but I still want to show up when someone is searching for my competition because they're way larger than me, or we happen to have an edge on our product or service, well, create a specific campaign, put the competitors that you want, and then you make your copy all about how you are different, right? That should be a minimum, and maybe better in some areas than your competitors. And your copy can express that. Usually you cannot measure your competitors on your ad copy, but you can mention it on the landing page. You can actually compare them. So I think that's a great play. I think that's something that should be done if in your space you have like the 1,000 pound gorilla in your space and you want to go against them, if you want to call it that way. Just be mindful that the way that you measure that campaign will not be a demand captured play. It's mostly a brand awareness effort. Is showing up for people just because you know they are searching for your competition rather than your product, right? Very similar to those little marketing stunts that happen at conferences, right? If you happen to be on the big tech conference, you will see a ton of competitors doing little things around it, right? Billboards, people dressed or on their company's logo, or even taxis or cars circling around. It's very smart because you already know that all that crowd happens to be potentially the same buyers, but they're not searching for you at the moment. So I will measure the success of that campaign, again, more of a brand play, impressions, even some engagement, but I wouldn't expect a ton of conversions. I don't know if you have another insight there, Miranda, about it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think going back to what you said about, I think you can build your competitor brand different ways, where when we talk about building a competitor campaign, really where you're mentioning the competitors is in the keywords, not necessarily the ad copy. So it doesn't have to come across as, aggressive. I know we have that conversation with clients every once in a while where it can sound, a little aggressive at first, but you're not necessarily having to overtly call out your competitors. The competitors' names are in the keywords, and then your ad copy. Yeah, if you think of your ad copy more as a brand awareness play where you were just presenting who you are and what you do, and why you do it in the space where your competitors are, it sounds a little bit better.
Yeah, yeah. So those are kind of like the three main focus. I will say that for most companies that we work with and most scenarios that we have seen, most of the budget that goes into capturing demand, again, with the
Mhm.
caveat that really for competitors, you're not capturing a ton of real demand for the product or service. Rather, you are showing up in front of someone that already, in theory, can be interested on you. That will be the most of the budget that will be allocated for capturing demand. However, if you have happened to cover high intent, make a choice on brand, make a choice on your competition, and you are not ready to explore building a brand, right? Going after the 95% that is not in market, then another possibility is that you go from the very bottom of the funnel, which high intent represents, and branch out or up into that core idea, right? So we call it adjacent demand. You can think of it like a little river where you put a little dam, kind of like make the flow go your way. That will be a good analogy. The other one is I will think about a B2C category. Think about if you have a dog and you're looking for for dog food or for a bed. And then you have seen how big e-commerce like Amazon and other and all those will suggest other things that you might be interested on, right?
Correct.
Other products or other services, right? You might be looking for a bed, you might be looking for a leash, you might be looking for, a park, someone to take care of your dog. So these other needs that you might have that once just have this core intent, you can go after. So those will be adjacent. And the other one is that you can just go up, right? For people
Mhm.
searching for, I'm thinking about getting a dog. I'm thinking about getting a second one. I'm thinking about, all these other things that you do before, right? You can target. The only reason why you want to do this we present this as a for option is because, again, because you're branching out and going up, all your metrics from a demand captures perspective will be lower or
Mhm.
worse, weaker, right? You will convert at a lower rate. It will be more expensive to get those conversions. And usually these campaigns have been always the purview of organic search, right?
Yeah.
Is in organic search where you usually capture most of these terms is very effective because you expose the brand, provide some value, and you don't have to pay for that visit. But if
Mhm.
for whatever reason you're struggling on your organic efforts, or you have a great resource, right? Or piece of content or material that you can think can create a lot of leads, for example, or subscribers that then you can later on nurture, that might be an effective way of acquiring them beyond showing up organically, beyond sharing those resources on social media. So
Mhm.
that will be kind of like the last bucket that you can think of on campaigns. I don't know,
Mhm.
your take on that one, Miranda.
Yeah, and I would say this is another one that it's not going to be necessarily relevant for every single B2B company. You using a B2B example, say the project management software you were talking about, say you offer corporate leadership training
Yeah.
could be kind of an area you could think of like, oh, okay, well, what else are the companies I'm looking for? Maybe they're looking for a new project management system, but not everyone is going to have that clear correlation of, something else that might make sense.
Yes. Yes.
All right. Well, I think we can jump in to the next topic then and talk through what are the three pillars of an effective campaign. So, those being the offer, the message, and the audience.
I love this part. Again, another big fundamental, right? We have discussed this. It doesn't matter if you're doing social media, if you're doing paid search, if in the future you're doing AI advertising. I highly, highly doubt that the rules will change or the fundamentals will change. You have an audience. Nowadays are humans. Who knows if in the future there's going to be some bots or agents that will be the audience. It might happen in the future. But you have an audience that you define by some mean. Usually on social is because there's something that you know about that person's context, demographics, or their behavior, right? What is it that they're doing online? But usually for platforms like Google Ads, it's based on what they're searching. That's the key innovation that Google brought to the table, that you could target people based on what they're searching for at the moment. So it was very innovative. And based on that, then this is the part that is a little bit tricky. Based on the audience, then you have an offer for them. The offer really matters, right? Because if someone has a high intent search, you need an offer that matches that high intent, right? You need to offer something that aligns with that level. And so, yes, there's some nudging that happens when you do advertising and when you do marketing in general. But if you are super misaligned with that, you will not get great results. More often than not, the misalignment happens because you have someone that has very little low intent and you have an offer that is very aggressive in terms of intent, and a person is pulled off. It happens the other way around as well sometimes, that you have someone is ready and you have a very weak offer where they cannot take action. And that's also something that shouldn't happen. So ideally, you have something that addresses the current intent and goes a little bit above or beyond that to move people closer to the next step, right? So that offer usually in the digital world is your landing page, right? Is the thing that you know that you want to offer. And what makes it very, very successful is two things. One, again, that it really matches your intent. It really, of all the products and services and industries that you serve, that you specifically care or cater to that user. And if you can presenting that offer something that is personalized or relevant to that particular person, even better. It's very hard to do. You need to have some information about that person, or at least information about the company they work, or the kind of a function that they perform. But if you can customize or personalize that offer to the buyer, it feels even better, right? We are going little by little closer to that idea of a billboard for one person, for an audience of one, right? Which is what marketing brings to the table compared to sales. So once you have those two, then it makes sense to say, well, because there's a bridge between the audience and the offer, I need to build up a message that is intriguing enough, compelling enough to people to learn a little bit more about the offer itself, right? That's the role of the ad, right? It doesn't have to be entertaining all the time, but it has to be something that stops you, right? Something that grasps your attention. So that's why, clever or not clever, but better copy works better, right? Or do a better job. That's why visuals and video usually perform a little bit better, because they are better at capturing attention. But the key thing that the message wants to do is to capture that attention so you can deliver on the offer, right? So again, those three elements have to go in tandem, because if you have a great message or ad that captures attention and then you don't deliver your promise on the offer, then again, everything falls apart. Right. So I love that what you're doing here is that mapping that idea that is fundamental across advertising, specifically to Google, means that you have to be super specific on those keywords, right? Making sure that our keywords B2B led and relevant to the campaigns that you're building. That you have an offer that matches that intent, right? If someone is looking for generic things, they got to understand your offer as a product. If they're searching for your brand, then you're gonna explain better everything that you know or that can be known about your brand. If you are going after people searching for your competition, then you want to highlight the differences and what makes you better, or or a better fit to that search. And obviously the message, depending on the space that you have, as much as you can leverage from the platform, in this case Google, that's where having those extensions matter, when having those call outs matter, because it gives you more real estate space to grab attention. Especially it's so hard because it's text. You don't have really a lot of visuals there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You also have to align the 3 pillars where your campaigns are going to be the best performing when you're using your keywords in your messaging and in your offer, but you want to do it in a very natural
Yeah.
way. It can't just feel like you're keyword sprinkling. So really finding ways to naturally incorporate the keywords in the message strategy for not only the ad copy, but the messaging on the landing page, where you're really speaking to who is viewing the ad and who's viewing the landing page, and talking about the problems that you solve for that person, and not just, the what you offer and the aspects of what you offer.
Yeah. Now that you're measuring that, I want to highlight that all of this is not theoretical or something that would be nice to have. There's a price if you don't do it right. And the price is, the best way that I can explain it is that Google has a lot of information about what should happen after someone makes a search and sees some answers. They have a ton of data about what is the expected behavior. So if your ad really is not relevant, they will notice it right away. They will see that compared to other answers, your answer, which is your ad, doesn't perform as well. And therefore, if you want to show up for that query, it will be more expensive for you than from the rest. And so the price of not doing this work great, and I use this super weird example, if you look at land dress shoes, formal shoes for men, all the ads that you will see are exactly that, because nothing else will be able to compete against a black formal shoe for a man. So unfortunately on B2B, it is possible to show up for something that is imagine that you're showing up a red one for women and casual, right? Tennis shoes. So it seems weird, but in B2B, it's possible to do something as reckless as that. The price will be that you will pay a ton for that click, or you will not even show up. So that's the way that it's important that you think about these 3 pillars of an effective campaign.
And it's also something to keep in mind when you're how and if to build out adjacent demand campaign, of
Correct.
deciding if that is something that you can, target those keywords in a natural way in a campaign, target advertising what you do. So moving on, ideally, when you're setting up the campaign, the best possible setup would be to have one specific landing page, using and targeting one keyword, with one ad built out using that keyword. But we understand that that's very time intensive and, takes a lot of work starting out. And you also have to make sure that the keyword that you're targeting is a high performing, highly relevant keyword. So at launch, you can set up your campaigns with one landing page that targets a group or theme of keywords that is used within 2 or 3 ads. And that is a great way to still be launching a campaign that's, very cohesive and highly targeted, but gives you a little bit more of a testing ground to figure out what keywords are the most relevant and performing the best, what ad copy is performing the best, and then you can kind of optimize into that ideal campaign setup. I don't know if you have any additional insights into that, Emilio.
No, I love that you're showing up this because, again, another little problem that we have repeating along this conversation today for B2B is the low volume of data. And
Mm-hmm.
so if you have a bunch of ideas, right, about high intent and competitors and all that, you need data to start measuring impressions, clicks, and conversion rates so you can actually find the keywords or search terms that are high performance, like you were saying, Miranda. So, but unfortunately, if you separate everything like we are showing up at the beginning, it will take a long time to prove, right, that actually that keyword is performing well. So because you need data, the best way to start is to throw some ideas, right? Mixing them with some of the ads and with not a generic, but the landing page that cover a bunch of those concepts on the keywords and start getting some data about the search terms that you're showing up, right? It's going to be a bunch of them, but very quickly, you will start seeing some terms that will be, go to the top. That will be the ones that will be the most search. And then you will discover which are the ones that are the most click. And finally, you will get which are the ones that are getting the most conversions. And that's when you want to isolate those high performers. Because for those, it's worth putting the time of creating something better on the offer and something better on the message because you already know that they perform very well. And obviously that will translate in better cost per acquisition because your relevancy will go up for those terms.
Right.
So I think this is
Really.
the best trade-off that you can do, right? And as you're saying, Miranda, all of that happens always with experimentation. And the speed of that is a question that we get quite often from prospects, is dependent on your investment, unfortunately, right? You have to put more money to get more data, so you can make those choices faster. If you do not want to or don't have access to those resources or simply the inventory is not there, just be patient. You will get the data. It's just that it will take longer for you to be able to make those choices.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so now I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen. So for our listeners, now you've got your campaigns built out. You have, the ones launched, but we know that the journey does not end at launch. The work doesn't stop once the campaigns have been launched. So let's talk through some Google ad optimizations that we recommend for once you get those campaigns launched. The one that I would say, like Amelia mentioned earlier, the search terms section of Google Ads. That's a great tool to visit frequently after your campaigns launch. And like we said, initially you almost are visiting that and looking at search terms more to look for exclusions, to look for negative keywords to add. You're likely going to be adding more negative keywords for that section in the beginning than finding additional keywords to target. Other than that, do you have any additional, optimization tips you recommend for listeners?
Yeah, I think I would love to share a framework. I think if you have that framework, you can apply it to any type of platform. But in this case, how it applies to Google, of course, that will be the focus, which is there's quality in every single step of that funnel. There's quality on the impressions you get. There's quality on the engagement you get. There's quality on the conversions, on the lead forms you get. And as we said for B2B, quality is really important because of the effort that you will have to put after you get a lead. So it makes no sense to focus on, in my perspective, it makes no sense to focus on engagement and conversions when you haven't addressed if you have a quality impressions, right? If you have good impressions. And the way that you gauge that is by looking at what people is actually querying or searching for, in this case on Google, right? Because that gives you an idea of the quality of the audience itself. And again, in terms of what times of the day, what places, what devices, definitely the query terms they're using, right? What audiences they belong to. Any piece of data that you can get about who the person is and what is the behavior they're showing should be judged against the type of companies and buyers that you want to actually be in front of. And once you get a good handle of that, as you were saying, Miranda, then I think it makes sense to focus on the quality of the engagement itself. The quality of engagement usually is driven by the quality of your messaging, right? So great ads, when you have the right audience, should perform better than mediocre ones. So really experimenting on what are the headlines that you're using, the descriptions, the links, the extensions that you're showing up or presenting to see if you can improve the quality of the engagement, right? Your CTR, which is typically for Google what you want to measure. And finally, when you get that right audience that is engaging at higher rates, you wanna get an idea of the quality of the conversion itself, right? So there you want to really invest time on understanding the structure of your offer, your landing page, the behavior of your users, and not just what you will get from analytics in terms of time spent and conversion rates, but actually taking a look at some of the sessions. You want to look at the sessions and make sure that the visitors are understanding the structure of the page, that they're struggling with loading the page or the devices that they're using, that is showing up in the right way, that is as easy as possible to take the next step, but at the same time that you get as much information as you need to get a quality lead to the person that is going to qualify and handle that prospect within the company. So again, maybe you are going to do a little bit of everything at the same time, but I highly recommend that you really invest, understanding the audience itself at the beginning, because whatever you improve here will trickle down to the next stages.
All right. Well, I think we're, close to time here, but I hope that was helpful for all of you listening. I hope it kind of gives you framework and some, ideas to go in and build out your Google ad campaigns. If you're still struggling, though, we're happy to help. You can always
Yes.
reach out to us. We'd love to help you set up your ad campaigns. Any last closing thoughts, Amelia?
No, I think you summarized it very well. And again, I hope we can continue to explore different pieces of this. And yeah, this has been fantastic.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, until next time. Bye, guys.
Until next time, bye.